Whoa. Studies show that homeschool kids are more politically tolerant than public school kids. Who'd have thunk it? Christian schools coming dangerously close to anti-Semitism in trying to ban Ben Shapiro from speaking. And why are we paying hundreds of thousands of dollars to figure out why lesbians overeat? Next on The Dr. Duke Show. Hey everyone, I'm Dr. Duke, and this is The Dr. Duke Show. Every week, we cover those stories impacting K-12 classrooms and college campuses across the nation, giving you high-quality educational commentary. Greetings to all of our listeners, and if you haven't done so, please subscribe to the podcast and iTunes. Never miss a beat here. As always, I am joined with Katie Petrick, my co-pilot on the show, but we're going to kick things off today with me and a story that's dear to my heart. Homeschool children are more tolerant than public school kids. This should be no surprise to anybody but big progressive educrats and deluded moms and dads who actually think that socializing your kids and teaching socialism and dragging social justice into kindergarten is going to actually make kids more tolerant. We know it's not. According to the journal, some research done on this, the Journal of School Choice says, quote, students with greater exposure to homeschooling tend to be more politically tolerant, a finding contrary to the claim of most political theorists, of course. And let me give you my quick reason why. When you send kids to public school, they're taught as a collective. They are collectivized. They're not allowed to be individuals. If they have individual opinions that deviate from progressive dogma, they get punished or they get pushed back a little bit. When kids are educated at home, they're educated by mom or dad, with maybe their brothers and sisters. And so they're treated as individual. Moms know that my oldest daughter and my youngest son can't necessarily be educated the same way. So moms who love their kids treat the kids as their God-created individuals that they are. And so why are we surprised that they grow up more tolerant? Because when you treat people as are taught in the name of Jesus Christ, for instance, to treat people as individuals, to have an individualistic education with a mom who knows and loves you, then why are we surprised that these kids are more tolerant than the public school social justice collective that is becoming more and more intolerant every year that goes by?
And the easiest thing for public school kids or private school kids to do is when they're in the classroom is to hide. It's the easiest thing you can do, but if you're at home and mom is asking you a question, you can't turn to your neighbor and just think that they're going to answer for you. So it makes the kids be responsible for their own thoughts and have to actually work through things instead of looking to everyone around them and just going with the crowd.
Yeah, and that's why, by the way, states like Iowa, Michigan, Oklahoma, Virginia lawmakers are all in the process of proposing greater restrictions on homeschool kids. It has nothing to do with the fact we know homeschool kids are going to read, do math, write better, generally speaking, than their public school counterparts. It wouldn't take much. But now you've got states, including some pretty red states like Oklahoma and Iowa, who are actually considering stopping that progress. And the reason they're doing it is not because they want the kids to read better. They're doing it because they want the homeschool kids to have the same social indoctrination that the public school kids are getting.
Yeah, and we're going to see this more and more as we go along, because how dare we have anyone outside of our federal control, under our fist, that they're able to think for themselves. If we don't control them now, they may actually have critical thoughts on their own. And so we can't let that happen. I've
said for a long time now that the biggest fear of the public, you're not going to do what you're doing to 60 million public school kids. The government, whether it's a Republican government or a liberal one, you're not doing this. You're not centralizing, federalizing education, making it more political and more ideological. You're not doing that to 60 million American public school kids to leave private and homeschool kids out. Inevitably, you're going to have to come for them. But, you know, I love this quote from Albert Cheng at the University of Arkansas's Department of Education Reform. Speaking about the progressive educrats who are giving kids lower education and more politics, he says, quote, members of the very group for which public school is believed to be most essential for inculcating political tolerance actually exhibit at least as much or more tolerance when they are exposed to homeschooling. Let me parse that for you. At whatever success, moderated success public schools have in making kids tolerant, whenever those kids are exposed to more homeschooling environments, they become dramatically more tolerant and politically understanding.
So let's do some Common Core math here. So when we have less public schooling, we get what for tolerance? Less public schooling equals more tolerance. Wow. Yes. There we go. All right. Well, let's move on to the Covington kids, because we've talked about this in the past year, but we have a bishop who is now scolding those Covington boys for daring to wear the MAGA hat. Bishop John Stowe of the Diocese of Lexington criticized Covington Catholic High School boys for simply wearing those red hats that say, "Make America Great Again." And he says he was ashamed of their actions. Now, we all know this happened after the boys, the Covington, Kentucky boys, were at the March for Life, and then they were visiting the Lincoln Memorial. And basically the group of boys were surrounded by some other groups of people, and an American Indian, Nathan Phillips, came up to one of the boys, Nick Sandman, and was beating a drum, and the whole thing just blew up. And immediately we had many different bishops and priests come out basically scolding these boys, and now they're taking it one step further by scolding them for simply wearing those hats. There was an op-ed that was actually published in the Lexington Herald-Leader from Bishop John Stowe, and he said, "It astonishes me that any students participating in a pro-life activity on behalf of their school and their Catholic faith could be wearing apparel sporting the slogans of a president who denigrates the lives of immigrants, refugees, and people from countries that he describes with indecent words and haphazardly endangers with life-threatening policies."
This bishop is a disgrace to the Catholic Church, and I'm getting tired of saying this. The entire hierarchy of the Catholic Church is increasingly a disgrace. You have a pastoral duty, Bishop Stowe, to look after the Christian boys in your school. Your moms and dads, Roman Catholic moms and dads, are paying you to give their kids a Christian education. These kids went to a pro-life rally, and they were harassed by black Hebrews, right? The black Israelites. They were shouted profane statements. You have nothing to say about that, Bishop. You go after their hat, and you accuse these kids of being political. I got news for you, Bishop. You send Christian kids to a pro-life rally, it's political. And rather than defend them, rather than stand by your kids, you attack them. This just blows me away. You know what this is? Your failed Catholic Church policies to protect the young altar boys who serve at your altars, the young boys who kneel and pray at your altars, the predation that you have allowed in the Catholic Church against those boys, how is that meaningfully different than your selling out of these kids? These kids also were under your pastoral care. These kids also were trying to live an authentically Christian life. And rather than defend them in their moment of need, you abandoned them. Now, I get it. This is not the same thing as molesting them, but you are intellectually and theologically molesting them, Bishop. You ought to step down really quick.
He's actually the third bishop to condemn these boys. The Diocese of Covington and Louisville did as well. And other responses include from Father James Martin, who's the editor-at-large for the Jesuit magazine America, and he's appointee of the current pope. He tweeted out, "I am as disgusted by the contemptuous laughter of the mass of students as I am moved by the quiet dignity of the solitary man who continues to chant. Those students could learn much from this elder if they had chosen to, or if they choose to." Now, he eventually regretted for wading into the controversy. He did not apologize to these boys, and he did also condemn these hats. But at the same time, if you look up Father James Martin, he is all about LGBT plus issues and saying that, we should go along with everything happening there.
The quiet dignity of the elder who lied, the quiet dignity of the elder who falsified his resume, the quiet dignity of the elder who basically accused the kids of something they did not do. The motto of the Jesuits in the Roman Catholic Church is ad majorem Dei gloriam, to the greater glory of God. And what we're seeing again and again and again, whether it's this pope, whether it's this Jesuit, whether it's the entire structure of the Catholic Church, they are no longer operating to the greater glory of God. I get it. You care about illegal immigrants as part of your pastoral care. But you care about illegal immigrants more than clearly you care about unborn babies. Because as Cardinal Dolan said, right, you've got Mayor Cuomo, Governor Cuomo of the state of New York, who is basically single-handedly ramrodded through legislation that would allow the destruction of babies in the process of being born. And Dolan's response is, we cannot use excommunication as a political tool, right? So on the one hand, a MAGA hat is more of a political statement to a bishop, a cardinal of the Roman Catholic Church, than the destruction of babies is, right? You see, if you can't excommunicate Cuomo or Pelosi or some of these people, if you can't excommunicate them, then you are toothless. Meanwhile, you've got a whole lot of venom to spend on stupid MAGA caps. A MAGA cap is a statement. It's not even necessarily a statement coming out of the kids' voices that they agree with every aspect of Trump's agenda. It's just a hat. It just says, make America great again. That is not a political statement in the way you say it is about immigrants. It says nothing about immigrants, bishop, cardinal, Jesuit. It is simply a hat. Yet you go after this as a political statement and you ignore your own filthy, filthy, filthy treatment of your own kids. It's shameful. If I were as a Roman Catholic, well, let me just say this. As somebody who grew up as a Roman Catholic and is struggling really, really hard to remain anything like a Catholic with what you're doing, I am stunned that moms and dads in your diocese don't pull their kids out of your schools. And congratulations on the young child, Sandman, the young boy, who is the primary victim of your hate, who is now suing your diocese as well. I hope that he gets as much money as any one of these children that you've abused over the years have managed to settle with the Catholic Church for. I hope a lot of your diocese money goes to him.
Well, and we have a story that kind of, it goes along these lines, because now we're at a point where, you know, these boys wear these hats and that's wrong. Now we have Christian kids who are being told that they're icky and that they shouldn't even be in the same, you know, on the same basketball court with kids who are at any other school. So in the wake of Second Lady Karen Pence's teaching art now at a Christian school, we have a progressive private school that is refusing to play against Emmanuel Christian School, which is where Pence teaches. It's Sheridan School. It's in Lurie, Virginia, but it's basically D.C. They're a K-8 co-ed progressive school that charges $36,000 a year, by the way. And they sent a letter from their school head, Jessica Donovan. They sent it to Emmanuel Christian saying, since the majority of students wanted to play, we were initially planning to go to Emmanuel Christian School with the student athletes wearing a statement of support, such as rainbow socks or warm-up jerseys. As we talked more, we understood that some students did not feel safe entering a school that bans LGBTQ parents, students, or even families that support LGBTQ rights. Forcing our children to choose between an environment in which they feel unsafe or staying home was not an option. So we decided that we would invite ICS to play all of the games at Sheridan. Since ICS declined our offer to host, we will only play our home games and will not go to ICS to play. So they plan to then, it's too unsafe for them to go into this Christian school, but then when the Christian school kids come for the home game that's being hosted by Sheridan, they're going to be wearing LGBT clothing and they're going to have signs and everyone's going to be chanting.
This is what happens when Catholic and Christian schools, and this little school that Mrs. Pence is teaching at is a traditional Christian school. So you have here a study in two contrasts. You have the Catholic Church schools, which are selling their kids down the road, selling the moms and dads' faith down the road for scoring cheap political points, right? Here you have an actually devoted Christian school, and you have a progressive school now that says their students, these kids aren't, the majority of kids wanted to play the game. The students wanted to play. What makes you think all of a sudden changed? Why did suddenly, all of a sudden, those kids who didn't see in terms of politics just wanted to play the basketball game, right? What do you think changed? Do you think it had anything to do with the progressive faculty at this progressive school, warning kids, threatening kids, using the social justice lectures about these kids, about what it means? In other words, you're playing politics just like the Catholic churches. You're taking your kids and who simply want to play tolerant. Homeschool kids are tolerant. Hey, you believe, we believe what we believe. Let's get together and play a game, shake hands, and walk away. That's the homeschool attitude, right? But no, at your progressive private school, you had to talk your kids who wanted to simply go and play, because that's how kids are, right? Kids want to go and play. Hey, maybe you tell your students, hey, let's go beat that Christian school. Let's take it out on them in the basketball court, right? Let's go out there and win one for the LGBTQ consortium. Can you imagine the new pep rallies, by the way?
Don't even want to, no.
Beautifully gay. Beautifully gay, right? I mean,
all the colors.
You think about pep rallies, and the people you want to put in charge of pep rallies, they're going to go from being bland to being fabulous overnight. But you could have done it that way, right? And tried to forge bonds. Let sports bring people together. But the idiot halfwits who run this progressive school decided we're going to use sports to drive people apart. Congratulations on ruining yet another opportunity for kids to understand communication, organization, cooperation, friendly rivalries, competition. Way to stomp all over that with your progressive agenda.
Well, they were following their athletics philosophy, which says it's the goal of Sheridan Athletics to prepare our young athletes for life ahead. Oh, wait, maybe they didn't do that.
Yeah, and in life ahead, are they going to have to deal with people who don't always agree with them?
Well, they're saying that the program allows students to further explore their sports of interest while teaching them life lessons. So that's a life lesson.
So the life lesson is walk away from anybody who has a different worldview and try to stigmatize them.
Well, the structure of their program is to promote independence, resiliency, teamwork, sportsmanship, accountability, and most important, fun. See, that's where they got it, is their fun.
And it was fun not to play. It was fun not to have to miss the game, right? And not to have to be able to play them that way. It was fun, real fun.
A lot of fun.
You sign up to, I know when I signed up for sports as a high school kid, I found the not playing better than the playing. I found not going to a game for a political reason much more exciting as an athlete than I did, actually competing athletically.
Absolutely. Just so everyone's aware, these schools are part of the Capital Athletic Conference, which also includes St. Patrick's School, which is an Episcopalian school, and the Westminster School, which is a classical school. So I'm sure at some point they will get kicked out as well.
Well, if there's
not an Episcopal,
if you think the Catholics are bad, when it comes to this kind of stuff, the Episcopalians, I'm surprised Episcopalians haven't driven the conservative Christian school out and salted the ground.
Well, wasn't it Robin Williams who said Episcopalian is Catholic light? I think that was him. Yeah. It might have been.
Well, that means a lot of things in the new context now. Catholic light, right?
All right. Well, let's move on to Ben Shapiro, because anytime you mention Benjamin Shapiro, controversy follows. At Loyola Marymount, it's a Catholic private school in California, they're receiving some blowback now after their student group, Young Americans for Freedom, protested having to answer some vague reflective questions, as they're called, when they invited Ben Shapiro to speak. Now, we know this has been going on. Anytime a university invites Ben Shapiro to speak, something is going to happen. And what happened this time is these kids were told that they have to answer these reflective questions. Adam Doherty, he's the chair of the YAF, he told College Fix that it was obvious the reflective questions were given to Young Americans for Freedom chapter solely because Shapiro was its invited guest. They hadn't made us do this for any other events. And it's kind of interesting because at the Daily Wire, along with Ben Shapiro, Michael Knowles and Andrew Clavin, they had gone to Loyola in November and none of these questions arrived. So FIRE, the Foundation for Individual Rights and Education, actually found that the questions that were asked of these students to answer violated the school's own policy. And so some of these questions basically alluded to the university's Jesuit values, asking student groups how they'll ensure the content of the program uplifts the worth and dignity of individuals. The university want to know how they're going to prevent the occurrence of elements of this program that may not respect or could be perceived to not respect all cultures, as well as a negative campus and community impact.
What you're saying here, and this is another Catholic school. Congratulations! There's going to be a lot of Catholic silliness in this episode. We planned it that way because if you cannot send a kid to a Christian school to get a Christian education, then quit. Just give it up. This is a classic example at Loyola Marymount, another Jesuit school, basically saying that what they're saying here is our own Catholic and Christian values are offensive, because Ben Shapiro, as an Orthodox Jew, is also perhaps one of the most articulate defenders of Christianity in the country today. He is a much more ardent and articulate defender of Christianity than any of these bishops, than any of these Jesuit scribblers, than any of these colleges or universities that claim to be Catholic. It seems to me that Ben Shapiro is more concerned about the future of genuine Christianity than Christian schools are. And so by forcing these kids to answer these reflective questions, right, all of which are loaded, all of which were designed to get them to see that Ben Shapiro, by being orthodox in his faith and by defending traditional Christianity, is actually not inclusive, is actually bigoted, is actually hurtful. And by doing this to Ben Shapiro, what you are saying, our Jesuit friends at Loyola Marymount, is that our own faith is a pose and a sham. It is a guise to sucker Catholic moms and dads with too much money to send their kids to our school, to make them think they're going to get an education that actually upholds Christian values. You are not doing that. Modern Christianity, its leaders, are ashamed and embarrassed about Christian worldview. They are ashamed and embarrassed about the protection of life. They are ashamed and embarrassed about the traditional the idea that Christ is a unique and only option for salvation. They're embarrassed by the fact that Christianity has a specific set of moral codes with regards to sex and sexuality, and they're embarrassed. They know they can't get rid of it because Christian moms and Catholic moms wouldn't send their kids to the school. So they want the money, and they've got a demographic, right? They're selling moms and dads a false lie about what they're doing to get the kids there, and once the kid's there, then they are unmaking Christian ideology. And notice this, it's always the same thing, right? We have to be, it's the non-Christian we have to care about more than the Christian. It is the non-believer whose worldview we have to uphold and praise while we step back from our own, because they recognize that their worldview and the worldview of the secular don't go hand in hand. So we champion the secular in the name of inclusivity, and we more and more criticize, tamp down, and prohibit our own Christian values to be seen as progressive, not as Christians.
All right, so YAF or YAF, they were not allowed to book a venue until they submitted these questions. And once that happened, they had to wait 6 weeks to get a response finally. And basically, media coverage got this, and Ben talked about it on his show. So what happens? Oh, well, we're going to rescind these reflective questions, and now Ben's going to get to speak on April 3rd. So we'll see what happens. And again,
after trying to humiliate these kids, after taking every legal and questionably legal step to try to prevent Ben Shapiro, ultimately, when the nation, people like Fire got involved, it turned out that you can't. So rather than apologize, rather than say we were wrong, rather than say we made a mistake, now they're acting as if somehow they've come to the conclusion that they're going to give in to these Christian kids. But even that is complex. If you look at the way they tried to frame the state, take a look at the next story, Katie, that you put together for us. I think this is a huge one that ties right into this.
So if it's not Loyola Marymount, now
Jesuit Catholic,
it's going to be Grand Canyon University, the largest Christian university. They are blocking Ben Shapiro from speaking, and administrators met with students to discuss this. And according to Young Americans for Freedom, they said that the administrators told students that allowing Ben Shapiro on the campus would not be good for the school long term. I don't know what that means. Sure. Number 2, Shapiro's approach instigates a divisive atmosphere.
Can I just throw this in there? So you got Jesuit Catholics. Think about the Roman Catholic Church's history with regards to Jewish people, going back all the way to the Middle Ages. Think about the potential dangers of radical evangelicalism when it comes to Jewish people. And now you've got a Jesuit school and you've got an evangelical school basically saying the Jew is divisive, right? Okay, I just want to throw that out there.
Just put that one into context there for us. Thank you. Also, Grand Canyon University wants to maintain its culture of unity, love, respect, and having all student voices on campus
except
heard.
Jews.
Except Yeah, well,
gotcha. Okay.
Basically, yeah.
Yeah, you know, it's awfully hard not to see this. If I were intersectional, if I were one of the progressive social justice warriors that I'm surrounded by with my university, I would have no problem calling this anti-Semitic. I would have no problem suggesting that what these so-called Christian schools are doing is keeping the Jew out, right? I mean, I'm not saying that that's exactly what's happening here. I have no doubt that if Ben Shapiro were a radical liberal Jew coming to talk about the oppression of Jews by Christians, both of these schools would have had him on in a second. It would have been no problem. But you're banning this guy because he, can I say this? Ben Shapiro, God bless you. You're more Christian than all these Christian school people are. I don't mean to offend you by that as an Orthodox Jew, but you are more authentically Christian than any of the clown show, the Christian clown show we're talking about today.
That is truth. And that's the thing. So the administrators actually in the meeting, they whined that Shapiro's style, the way he presents is too cutthroat, and that his mere presence is divisive. And we've said this before.
Wait, whoa. I'm sorry to keep interrupting you. But the mere presence of this Jewish man on campus is divisive.
Yes.
Now that crosses the intersectional line. I am not a progressive intersectional social warrior idiot, but even I can see that it's awfully hard to spin that another way. The presence of Ben Shapiro on this campus, the singular presence of him is divisive.
And they spun it. This is how they spun it. They cited DACA students and what Shapiro may say about immigration. That's how they spun that one to be like, how dare he?
But the irony is that Ben Shapiro is fairly moderate on that. He's not against immigration. He's against illegal immigration.
Shouldn't we all be against
Shouldn't we?
Illegal?
Is it not federally illegal? I mean, do we not have a federal law that prohibits illegal immigration? So the Jewish guy who actually is sympathetic to Christianity, visiting a Christian school, is now saying that he wants legal immigration, not illegal immigration, and that's going to offend DACA students, which is why we have to keep them off campus.
Duh.
I can think of many, many Nazis who could not have come up with more subtle reasons to persecute people.
That's true.
If we're playing the who is Ben Shapiro game.
All right, one more about Ben, because we didn't get talked about it too much when it actually happened back in November. But at Gonzaga University, college Republicans...
Jesuit, Catholic, Gonzaga University.
Yep, college Republicans tried to get Ben Shapiro to come. And the VP, Vice President of Student Development, Judy Biggs-Garbulo, denied, citing that the protests and the safety issues. Again, Ben Shapiro. Little
Ben
guy.
Shapiro
He
shows up, speaks reason. He doesn't, he doesn't swear. He doesn't cuss.
It's very polite.
Doesn't use slurs.
Very polite.
He is incredibly polite and engaging with all the questions he gets, including the oppositional questions. It's the campus format. It's these campus administrators at these Catholic schools who are the hostile ones. They don't want to hear what he has to say. They want to prevent their student body from hearing what they have to say, because if they listen to, here's the thing, at places like any one of these Christian colleges, right? California, Washington State, Arizona, whether they're evangelical, Jesuit, or Catholic. The one thing I would say is it seems like the so-called Christian administration wants to keep their kids from hearing Ben Shapiro, because he might, for the first time on those campuses, those kids might actually hear something that is reasonably compatible with the catechism of the Catholic Church or the Christian Bible. Maybe it takes Ben Shapiro to go to evangelical Christian and Jesuit Catholic colleges and talk his talk, right? Maybe that's the closest thing they're ever going to get to Christianity on a Christian campus these days. And that the administrators can't let it happen.
Yeah, and that's why they say things trying to hide it and saying that we're being the Christians here by saying Gonzaga University is committed to the human dignity of every individual. This is the core of our mission based on the teachings of Christ Jesus and the foundations of the Society of Jesus. We stand in solidarity with vulnerable members of our community who may be targeted for discrimination, ridicule, or harassment by others.
Right, and all of that is what Ben Shapiro is according to them, right? Even though they're the ones who are the censors, they are the ones who are shutting somebody out in very questionable circumstances. They are the ones who are ignoring the minority, evidently, of Republican students and conservative students on their college campus. They're bringing in all sorts of speakers from the progressive left, right, who marginalize these very same conservative speakers, as I know we're about to talk about.
Yeah, so we actually have an instance where they bring a speaker in at a Christian university, and whoopsie, we should have vetted him a little bit better, because at Belmont University...
He wasn't Jewish, was he?
I hope.
Oh, good, because...
Danger. At Belmont University in Nashville, Tennessee, they welcomed Dr. Joseph Morgan. He's a professor in School of Music at Middle Tennessee State University, and he was supposed to be a main speaker during convocation. Now, the students at Belmont have to go to a certain number of these convocations in order to graduate. So this wasn't a mandatory speech they heard, but a lot of students heard it. The event was listed as being the Music and Discourse Lecture, Joseph Morgan, MTSU, Popular Music and Presidential Politics. It's supposed to be a brief survey of popular music, including hip-hop, rock, country, and Tejano, discussing musical resistances to Donald Trump's campaign for president. By employing the concept of earned media, the talk investigates the way that these artists actually assisted the campaign they sought to defeat. Okay, it sounds very academic the way he says that. Here's what happened. There were lecture slides that were more accurately titled Popular Music and the Impending Tyranny of Donald Trump. And there's video out there actually obtained exclusively by the Lone Conservative, which is their student newspaper, capturing the song F Donald Trump. And as Morgan was standing there, that's all you hear in the background. F Donald Trump, over
F Donald
and
Trump,
over
F Donald
and
Trump,
over.
F Donald Trump. So it's almost subliminal. And I'm willing to cut Belmont a slightly more bit of slack than the other schools, simply because they didn't invite him necessarily to give a rousingly political statement. They expected it was going to be mostly about music, right?
Yeah.
Nevertheless, they brought him. And Belmont's a good little evangelical Christian college. But this should show you how far this has gotten. It is a very big music college. One of their emphases, their strongest emphasis, is in the music department. And we know about musicians, right? They tend to be much more counterculture, much more progressive. And so I'm not surprised that this happened. What I am surprised about, though, not surprised about, is the broader point I want to make about this is, as with all these other Christian schools, conservative Christian kids on these campuses, evangelical conservative Christian kids on these campuses, and Belmont has more of them than most schools, right? Evangelical conservative Christian kids are routinely exposed to radical leftist politics, anti-Christian rhetoric and politics. Over and over again, they're exposed to it as part of their education. And these conservative kids can take it with a smile. We don't see conservative Christian kids boycotting or banning or throwing rocks or hijacking and commandeering a speech to shut it down. And so why can't those Christian kids be allowed to hear pro-Christian speakers like Ben Shapiro? That's the problem, isn't it? And this is what I think this is a really important segment we've done. This show today, I know a lot of people watch our show in clips and segments. We do a good job of breakout clips. But you really got to go back to the beginning of this show. If you're just hearing this now and it intrigues you, go back and watch the whole show and see the slow build in all of these so-called Christian and Catholic schools. And the evidence is overwhelming. And I'm going to say it again, that our Christian kids on college campuses and Christian campuses, they politely listen to radical opinion after radical opinion, anti-Christian worldview after anti-Christian worldview, without fuss, without anger, without protest. But the simple presence of a pro-Christian, pro-Jewish, pro-tradition conservative speaker like Ben Shapiro, we're denying kids access to hear them. It is absolutely stunning when you think about this. And how do you not use the word fascist? When we promote one worldview and utterly restrict the other one, but this isn't a public school. These are in Christian schools where kids are going there and parents are paying money to hear the Christian side explained and valued. It is shocking how far we've come so quickly in the anti-Christian bias of our Christian schools. Yeah,
and meanwhile, talk to me a little bit, what's happening on our public school universities and mostly in the Ivy Leagues?
A story that it may not seem all that interesting in and of itself. It's titled, "Numerous Universities Allow Sexual Relationships Between Students and Supervising Staff." In the grand scheme of things, it may not even seem to be the most interesting story. Okay, they're universities, they're highly sexual places. The taboos between students and academic faculty and staff having sexual relations breaking down like every other thing. But I want to take a moment and talk about this because, to me, this is the perfect illustration of intersectionality. If you're sitting out there in TV land and you don't really quite understand what intersectionalism, this is it. Intersectionalism is the argument that as more and more liberal progressive social justice values began to kick in at our universities, and we had more empowerment of black groups and more empowerment of gay groups and more empowerment of Islamic groups and feminist groups, what ended up happening is liberals started eating their own, right? Who's the bigger victim, the black male or the white lesbian, right? Who's the bigger victim, the Muslim or the illegal immigrant, right? And so what happened was they started turning on each other. Who gets more perks? Who is more victimized? Who claims more grievances and demands more institutional reforms? Well, intersectionality was invented by feminists primarily, but social justice warriors, to be able to say, look, you're a Muslim male, you don't like women all that much. I'm a lesbian gay, I can't stand religion all that much, but let's shake hands and agree that it's always whitey's fault. Intersectionality is simply the invention of a way of blaming everybody's problems on white male patriarchal culture. So as much as we may not like each other, Jewish man and lesbian woman, we can certainly agree that we hate white guys more. That's intersectionality. Finger guns a-blazing. And this story, in my mind, captures that because it is the intersection of really silly things that only could happen on a college campus. On the one hand, you've got the hashtag #MeToo Believe All Women college campus, right? Where any woman at any point can accuse a man of sex, even if she consented to it, even if it's 2 years later and she changed her mind. 2 years later, she decided it wasn't consensual. We've got to believe her because hashtag men are liars. Now you're going to put that culture of radical empowerment of females, right? Getting rid of due process, all of that stuff. Now you're going to put that in with the sexual revolution aspect of the social justice warriors, which says, hey, if you're an 18-year-old, 19-year-old, and you have a professor and you want to have sex with him, we can't tell you no. How dare we infringe upon your sexual freedom? This is a campus that is sex positive. We encourage sexual play. And then you throw in the idea that we've heard from social justice warriors forever, that people in power cannot have sex with people under them because that's a problem. Remember how the liberals ran after positing that, right? Powerful men having sex with interns would be wrong until Bill Slick Willie Clinton got Willie really slick, right? And decided to play that game.
Little Willie
Suddenly then, home. Right? All the social justice warriors, that's why intersectionality was invented. How do you excuse Bill Clinton for what he did, and yet still go after powerful white Republicans who have sex with their interns? You do it by intersectionality. So my interest in this story is simply to point out a little illustrative fairy tale, a little fable, a little moral Aesop's fable for you without animals. Well, some of them are animals. The argument here that this is how intersectionality works on college campuses. That you can justify anything that liberals do under intersectionality while similarly condemning in conservatives for doing the same things. And I think that's my takeaway from this particular story.
And now we're going to wrap things up with extra credit, where we run down the stories that should be run over. We begin at the sororities of George Washington University. According to student newspaper G.W. Hatchett, the Pan-Hellenic Association assured potential new sorority members they could enjoy coloring books, food, headphones, and stress balls into 2 relaxation rooms in order to alleviate anxiety during the January recruitment period that was 4 days long. Izzy Griffith, the president of the association, said the rooms give a mental and physical break from recruitment should they need it. This will enable them to not only enjoy the process more, but have better experiences in the parties, which we hope will find them their homes.
Fraternities and sororities actually need a room where they can get together and decompress. What happened to the days when you would just hang a tie on the doorknob?
And ladies, once you are de-stressed, make sure to head over to the College of St. Rose in New York to get your free binders. These binders are not to hold your homework, but to hold your breasts. The Catholic College is helping women transition to men for free. Student newspaper The Chronicle explained that the College Counseling Center is giving away chest binders, which flatten and obscure the outline of female breasts to students who request them. Just present a student ID and request a size and color, and you too can pretend to be something you aren't.
Outstanding. Another Catholic school interested in making young girls look like boys. I wonder what that could be about.
Now, meanwhile, at Chapman University in California, Snow White is teaching you how not to rape. The group creating a rape-free environment for students installed a poster display of Prince Charming kissing Snow White and the same prince attempting to kiss another prince because equality. The posters state, sleeping people can't say yes. Anything but a yes is no. The posters also lay out a definition of consent: conscious, freely given, and obvious. Obviously, Chapman University is in the running for the most woke or asleep university.
So you're going to leave this woman in a vegetative state rather than let her be kissed awake. That sounds like progressive medicine.
In more Disney news, Mary Poppins is racist. Yep, Julie Andrews blacking up her face with soot during the 1964 classic is clearly racist, according to Linfield College professor Daniel Pollack-Pelsner's op-ed in the New York Times called Mary Poppins and a Nanny's Shameful Flirting with Blackface. The professor writes, when the magical nanny accompanies her young charges, Michael and Jane Banks, up their chimney, her face gets covered in soot. But instead of wiping it off, she gamely powders her nose and cheeks even blacker. Apparently, all Mary Poppins needs is a spoonful of sugar to make her shame go down. It's a chimney. It's not a black person. When you climb up a chimney with a broom, you get soot on your face. It's about chimney sweepers. Is the earth now racist when coal miners come up from the ground with soot on their faces? Since we are on the topic of race, if you desire authentic food, know that you support white supremacy, at least according to New York University graduate student Sarah Kay. Studying 20,000 Yelp restaurant reviews for her master's thesis in her food studies program, Kay found that when reviewers use the term authentic, they note things like dirt floors, plastic stools, and other patrons who are non-white when reviewing non-European restaurants. On the other hand, when the term is used to describe European eateries, it's associated with more positive characteristics. Here's my Yelp review of any restaurant. Did the food taste good? Was it reasonably priced? Yes? Then eat there again. I love the irony of this. The word authentic was used to stop hurting the feelings of trashy restaurants. And now the word authentic is itself racism. I love this, the left eating their own stuff, and this is another example of it. And speaking of overeating, our final story is out of Old Dominion University, where the National Institutes of Health is spending more than $220,000 to find out why obese lesbians binge eat. Old Dominion researchers hypothesize the culprit is intersectionality. They claim society can influence young women's eating in everyday life, and they hypothesize that racism and homophobia are having an impact on minority lesbians who binge eat. Research will continue through November 2022 or until all of the gravy has been served. Well, make sure with that comment to head over to iTunes or your favorite platform and subscribe to the podcast. Make sure you leave us a 5-star review, maybe talk about what you heard about on today's episode. And for daily articles and videos, make sure you follow Freedom Project. Now make sure Freedom Project, it's one word. Go on Facebook, Freedom Project, and see much more of the content like this.
And that does it for us this week on The Dr. Duke Show. If you like what you heard, please share the podcast with your friends. For Freedom Project, I'm Dr. Duke, she's Katie, and we will see you next time.